Well, actually it goes back a very long way. It goes back 30 years because I'm a scientist, and I was aware as a young scientist that global warming was going to be an issue, although there was much less data and much less evidence available at that time. And I remember then I organised a international workshop in Canberra, where I was working, on renewable energy, or really on energy futures for Australia, where we looked at different scenarios for future energy in Australia, and we first took renewable energy very seriously as making a contribution. Well, they had a limited hearing at that time because the technologies were not as advanced as they are now. And in fact, I was a CSIRO scientist, and I became sort of infamous by publishing a paper arguing that Australia could actually generate a lot of electricity from the wind, that we had a lot of potential, and this was part of a future pathway. And there are a lot of people who ridiculed the idea at the time. I guess one of the nice things now is to look back and say, well, at least if we look at what's happening in Europe, wind power has made the biggest contribution to new generating capacity in Europe last year and the year before. So we're talking about a mainstream industry with huge investments and creating a huge number of jobs. So there has been some real positive evolution, but not enough in Australia. Well, I think the first thing is to really educate the public that this is a real problem. It's causing a huge bottleneck in Australia and a few other countries where coal is really big, like the United States. And really, I think if people are made aware that we are holding back clean, green, job-creating technologies that are now either commercially available in many cases, or in other cases semi-commercial, on the brink of rapid expansion, and we're holding back these technologies. Our federal and state governments have mostly what I would have to call token policies to create the appearance of action, but the substance is extremely weak. So I think the first step is public awareness, and then I think those who are aware and concerned can be most effective by joining community groups like the Bathurst Community Climate Action Network and other environmental groups that are working to bring Australia properly into the 21st century with renewable energy and energy efficiency instead of dirty fossil fuels, which are really, if they continue to grow, will really be the end of human civilization. I take encouragement from what is happening in Europe. In Europe, we've seen enormous strides in the last 20 years with renewable energy and energy efficiency. China too is well ahead of Australia, even though it's growing its coal-fired power stations and motorways, and cars are coming onto the road at a huge rate. At the same time, there's also a very substantial sustainable development program in China. China is the world's biggest manufacturer and user of solar hot water. It's the world's biggest manufacturer and exporter of solar photovoltaic electricity, and it has the highest rate of growth of wind power in the world. China has been doubling its wind power capacity every year for the last 5 years. So although they are still partly stuck in fossil fuels, they are preparing for the future, for taking over the world markets in renewable energy as well. They've got a foot in both camps. And I think if we in Australia transform our energy systems, that would give a lot of strength to the sustainable energy movement in China, and we would see more rapid change even there. Well, the consequences, I don't really want to dwell on them because they're so severe. We would be leaving a different planet to our children and grandchildren. A planet that on average is much warmer, has much fiercer droughts and floods and rainfall and heat waves, a rising sea level that I guess will take some time to get to Bathurst, but for the majority of the Australian population that's on the coast, and the majority now, almost the majority of the global population, rising sea level is going to be a major problem over the coming century. So really a failure is not an option. We could indeed see the destruction of human civilization. I'm sure people will survive, but many, there will be, if we go that pathway and try to stick to greenhouse polluting industries and energy, I think we'll be seeing a lot more conflict, a lot more refugees. We're only just seeing, tiny, negligible amount of refugee problem right now. So I'd rather look at what we can do and what has to be done. Well, I think personal actions are important for ourselves, for community education, and those of us who want to see major change would have very little credibility if we didn't try to do the right things ourselves. So, for example, I would feel very bad if I'd driven from Sydney to Bathurst, and actually I really enjoyed the train journey. It's a fantastic train journey. There just isn't enough choice of train transport. I have 100% green power at home, but I use so little electricity that my bills, are very small anyway, so I don't mind paying an extra 4.5 cents a kilowatt hour for green power because it's really trivial. But having said that, in our households we're really only about 1/5 of the total energy problem and greenhouse problem. And the really big greenhouse polluters are large-scale industries: aluminium, steel, concrete, transport, iron and steel, forestry. These are the big greenhouse gas polluting industries. And of course electricity generation from coal, which is there all the time. And these are responsible for the majority of greenhouse gas emissions. And so if we're to deal with that, we have to start from a base in our own individual and community action, and then build to social and political action at the federal and state and also the local government level to get really big changes initiated, to get the right policies from our governments instead of the token policies that we have right now. I think it's worth keeping in mind that that renewable energy and energy efficiency can create far more jobs than the existing energy system can, if they're allowed to do so. And the reason is that we're dealing with technologies that are somewhat smaller in scale. The giant dredges that do our open-cut coal mining are imported. So are the huge machines that do underground coal mining. The giant turbo generators in our coal-fired power stations are all imported. Now the opposite is the case with wind power and solar power. Because of the smaller scale of the technologies, we can actually manufacture many of the components, many more of the components in Australia. Of course, we need sensible government policies to give incentives to locate the manufacturing plants in areas that used to be coal mining areas, so that there is a continuity of job potential, and so that the children of coal miners don't have to go down into the coal mines and can have a wide choice of decent, clean jobs. So there is huge potential, huge job potential, and economic contribution possible from a genuine, ecologically sustainable energy future.